guys, my name is Tommy with the Fastlane Car, and today we are looking at all the really cool things underneath, inside, and outside the new 2020 C8 Corvette. This is not going to be one you want to miss. The big news for 2020, of course, is that the C8 Corvette is mid-engined, which means in the front you have a frunk or a front trunk. Now the cool thing about the front of the C8 Corvette is not actually the size, which is pretty generous. Chevrolet says it will hold your standard carry-on, but actually the shape here of the cut line. This looks like something out of the B2 Stealth Bomber. It's a really angular, kind of special design. Now to open the front trunk, you actually push a button on the door, which has a little picture of a Corvette and the front lifted open. To get into the new Corvette, there's no door handle. It's actually hidden up underneath this big C, which acts as another air vent for the engine. So you put your hand on this pad, grab the switch, and the whole door folds open. And then on the inside, there's a button you push to unlatch it and a mechanical release just in case a battery dies. All right, so different car, different shirt. Because we only have a limited amount of time with each car every day, we've got a Z51 performance package, and I've got this really cool new TFL shirt. Shameless promotion there. But take a look at the front end of the Corvette. Now we talked about how you can pop the front open from the button on the inside, but there's actually another way. If you reach down here in actually the left hand cooling intake, there's a little button, and you push the button and the trunk pops open as well. And just like all new cars here sold in the US, if you need to escape the front of the car, if you're trapped in the front, there's actually, look, this little man jumping out of the front of a mid-engine Corvette. Push that button and it will unlatch the front trunk, and look at that. Even 12 volts of power for everything you need. So here's the key for the 2020 Corvette. You've got your trunk pops, unlocked, remote start, and check this out, an old school key. And this is really important to know because if your battery dies in the 2020 Corvette, you can't use the button to get inside because there's not going to be any power. So what you have to do is channel your inner yogi. What I mean is you really have to lay down, and then the keyhole is way up here in the scoop actually. You put the key in and you twist it and the door pops open. Now my dad actually had a really cool opportunity to sit down with the chief engineer of the C8 Corvette and talk about some of its functions and even do a 0 to 60, impromptu 0 to 60 to see how this car performs. Take a look.
So let me ask you first your name just for the record, so I have it right.
Yeah, my name is Ed Piatek.
And you are the chief engineer?
I'm the chief engineer for the 8th generation Corvette.
Let's talk about obviously the biggest change, which is now the engine is right behind us, the small block V8. And how does that change the way that you approach the car? How does it change the way that you engineer the car?
It's fundamentally different. It's like starting from a clean sheet of paper, and that's what we did. We benchmarked some of the best cars in the segments, bought some cars, tore some cars apart to make sure that from the first time out we delivered a car that was very good and compelling, and that didn't take a couple generations to learn the tricks of mid-engine. But I mean,
I have to ask, what cars? I'm going to wonder.
Yeah, we've bought and disassembled Ferrari 458s. We've got 911s. We had a McLaren MP412C.
Wow, those are pretty high.
Yes.
High standard performance cars.
Yeah, and those are the benchmarks in the segment, and we really want to compete with them on an equal basis. And if you don't know what they do, it's going to be harder to beat them at their own game. So that was really the goal from the start.
And so you took these cars, you benchmarked them, and then how did you make this one better?
I think it comes from leveraging the things that Corvette has always done. So we can deliver a car that's got all the performance, but at a value proposition they can't match because we leverage the scale of General Motors. So as an example, a silly example would be an airbag module. Everybody's got to buy an airbag module. We buy millions of them. So our cost for an airbag module is going to be a lot lower than a bespoke boutique manufacturer. So for every part that a customer doesn't see or touch, we leverage General Motors economy of scale. And that gives us the opportunity to deliver a car that's on par, better from a performance standpoint, and one that comes at a fraction of their price.
Accelerate to start. Will do. 1:47 with two of us in here.
Yeah, that's actually not the world's best time. I think
we're also in touring mode.
Yeah, and I can show you how to set up a launch control mode. Probably not best on public roads. You'll do it tomorrow with the track.
Yeah, we'll do it at the track.
But you'll see that there's a little handshake you do with the traction control buttons. You get into launch control. You step on the gas and the brake, and just release the brake, and it'll blast the car.
And keep in mind there's two of us in here.
Right.
And we're big guys.
I still think even with the two of us in the car on the right surface, it's probably a 3.132 car.
Yeah. And we're also, my watch says about 2,000 feet above sea level.
That's a good point.
All right, guys, you join me with Jason, who's our pro driver in the new Corvette. And Jason, how do we do launch control in this guy?
So put it into track sport, track PTM mode, step on the brake, floor it, release the throttle, and off we go.
Wow! So let's talk about the rear of the Corvette, which is the business end. Now, to pop the hatch, same thing, there's a little button with the back of the Corvette open, and you'll see right here the Corvette top, because of course the Corvette Coupe has a removable center panel, and you're probably wondering how you pull it off. Well, it's just 3 levers. You've got one here, you've got one here, and lastly one in the roof. Even though it's one massive piece, it comes out super easily, and it is really light. Let's show you how you strap it down. You take the curved edge, and it's a little bit tricky actually with the spoiler, but you bring this into position, and there's little feet at the bottom. You line up those little feet to get them nice and secure, and then you lean it forward. You're probably thinking, let's just hit the road, but of course this is a Corvette, you don't want this flopping around. Simply push down and latch it into place. Now this top isn't going anywhere. To close up the rear deck lid, you close it down, and you don't actually have to slam it, just give it a little push, and it sinks down soft close. Really convenient. One of the cool new features here on the C8 Corvette is a performance data recorder, and the C7 had this as well. It's a camera that'll record what's going on a track like that, but it'll also actually now run continuously when you're on the road and record to an SD, much like Tesla, so that you have a constant dash cam going in case anything happens. Now you can have it just show what the car is doing, and you can also have it overlay some performance data. It's really pretty cool stuff, and now the camera, unlike the old one, is not a potato.
You know, I gotta say, I'm really impressed. One of the things you said in the briefing was that everything you touch, if it looks aluminum, it is aluminum. If it looks like it's leather, it is leather. And you're right, the interior here is certainly world class, right? There's nothing here that to me feels like there's any cost cutting. Was that something you had to push for?
Absolutely, and you know, I credit our design team. They're the ones that really wanted to take the next step, and I think Corvette has this sort of legacy of thrifting the interior to hit a price point. And with this car, we said, let's do the interior right. Let's make it bespoke and really beautiful and befitting of the outside of the car, and not sort of disappoint people once they open the door. And I think our design team really knocked it out.
One of the coolest things about the interior of the new Corvette has to be the dash design, because there are a lot of floating elements. For example, you've got this centerpiece that rises above the dashboard, and even on the right side here by the passenger, you've got another little gap. This makes the dashboard almost look like a work of art in itself. There's just a lot of complexity going on, and in my opinion, it all works very well. The place to be in the new Corvette is certainly the driver's seat, and not just because you're driving the new Corvette, but because as a passenger, you're pretty much walled off from the entire world here. You've got this huge center pillar. That means I can't really see the 8-inch center display, and I certainly can't really use it either. I mean, look how far the volume knob is. It's a full reach just to reach it. It is so aggressively angled toward the driver that you're kind of stuck. The other issue is there's no real place to put your arm as a passenger, because this big pillar extends way back here. Now here in the center, you'll notice one of the most distinctive parts of the new Corvette, and that's the HVAC controls. Basically, the climate control is all in a huge row down the center. So up here, you've got your automatic climate for the driver's side, then you have cooled seats and heated seats for the driver's side, sync and automatic functions, you've got your airflow display, of course fan, and then the whole thing is repeated down here for the passenger with, of course, your defrost settings. Now, if all that is a little bit overwhelming, they actually also duplicated located here in the center, so you've got a lot of different options, but why wouldn't you use these fire jet controls on the side? This is one of the coolest, most unique parts of the car, and I just love that it's here. This is a 495 horsepower, 6.2 liter LT2 small block V8. It's a dry sump lubricated engine with 3 oil scavenge pumps. All that means is they can put the engine really low in the car. And it also means that this car is not going to starve for oil when you're pushing a lot of G's on the track.
I got to ask you a softball question before we get back. What's your favorite part? I mean, you spent, what, the last 7 years in this. This is your baby. What's the part that you're the proudest of?
I think just the engine and the 495 horsepower makes the car so quick. I mean, that 500 horsepower really was a sort of an up-level car, a performance variant in the past. To have that much power in a base Stingray makes the car just super fun to drive all the time.
Yeah, and it starts at, what, 59,000, right? That's the base.
Right, yeah.
And I think this one that we're in is 75,000.
Yeah, I think that's probably in the ballpark.
And then if you get all the bells and whistles, you can get into the 90s.
You can't spend as much as you'd spend on a competitor that's giving the similar performance. So yeah, it still does maintain that great Corvette tradition of the value proposition. And the neat thing is, as you mentioned, depending on what options you want, what performance you need, whether you're going to track the car or not, whether you want particular interior design, some of the electronic features. You can get a great car for $60,000, or you can get a car that looks like a $300,000 car for less than $100,000.
Let's talk about the transmission in the C8 Corvette. There's only one option, and it's an 8-speed dual clutch automatic, and it's all push button actuated. So you've got park right there, which we're in, then you pull back for reverse, you've got a little neutral button there, and then a pull back for drive, and you'll notice it says auto. And that's because to engage the paddle shifters, you have to push the M, and then GM tells us that you can hold this thing at red line all day long and it won't upshift for you.
What have you engineered into this to make it that much of a performance, I guess, weapon on track?
Sure, I think it's really about technology, and so the first piece is the dual clutch transmission. No excuses, bespoke transmission that fits only this car and gives you lightning quick shifts, this incredible performance where you don't have a sag in acceleration as it goes through the gears. We have magnetic ride control 4.0, which uses accelerometers at the knuckle, so we can anticipate the body moving before it moves, and we can catch the control and keep the tires connected to the pavement. We've got a brake system right now that's effectively a brake-by-wire system, and we can set up the gain for the brakes to be comfortable on the roads in a tour mode, or give you more aggressiveness in a sport mode, or even extend the high G deceleration modulability on track. And so it's a matter of picking the technologies that really elevate the performance of the car.
One thing the Corvette team is very proud of here on the new C8 is actually the storage capacity, and take a look at this. They say it'll actually fit 2 golf clubs in the rear, no problem. 2 sets of golf clubs, and in fact it does, but take a look at the front trunk of this particular model, because this one also has the optional fitted luggage. In 50 years from now, that is going to be crazy, crazy valuable. The hazard controls here for the Corvette are actually up here on the center console. The front is your pretty standard amber flash that extends all the way down toward the front of the light. But the turn signals on the rear are now sequential, and I think they look absolutely brilliant. There are a couple different versions of 2020 Corvette, actually 2 primary ones, a standard car and this one, the Z51. This is kind of your track handling package. You've got the spoiler in the rear and ELSD sticky summer tires, and this really great color. This is called Rapid Blue. It's a $500 option, but easily my favorite in any new Corvette. We spent absolutely forever looking for the parking brake here in the Corvette, and it's really hidden. It's actually way down here by your left knee. It's a push button. And actually, let's talk about the brakes in general, because we had a chance to sit down with Brembo, who designed the brakes in this new car.
My name is Benjamin Pohl. I work for Brembo North America, and I'm a program manager for General Motors. This is the 3rd generation of brakes that we've done for the Chevrolet Corvette. We got into the program on the original C6 ZR1 with a carbon ceramic application, and we did all the brake systems for the previous generation C7. So we're really excited to be part of this new C8 line, but obviously this car is quite a bit different than the 2 cars previous to it. So 3 of the 4 calibers on this car are brand new, clean sheets designed. The other thing that's unique on this car for the first time on Chevrolet Corvette is the electronic parking brake. So the previous generation had what's called a drum and hat parking brake with a hand lever. Now we've moved it to an electronic system where the customer can just pull up a button and activate the brake, and this is on the base car and the Z51.
So I got to ask, Brembo, an Italian company.
Yeah.
How different are these brakes than the brakes that Brembo provides, say, Ferrari?
They are no different. I mean, every brake we do is application specific, so they're all going to be different in piston sizing, pad size, material, the way it integrates in the chassis architecture, but the technology that's core to Brembo, the aluminum brake calipers, the monoblock technology, the same stuff that Ferrari has, we're providing that same technology to Chevrolet and all of our premium customers.
This new Corvette comes with wireless charging, and I was looking around everywhere. It's not here in the center there, it's not in the console, is it on the dash? No, it's nowhere to be found. It's actually very hidden. It's behind both the driver and the passenger in this little cubby. You put your phone in like that, and it will start charging your device. Now this is a very secure location. It actually has these little cleats that really hold the phone in well, but it means you're never going to be able to navigate with your phone charging because it's behind you. All right, well that's not super fair. I mean, of course you could navigate if you've got Apple CarPlay, but if it's in the wireless charger, it's out of sight, out of mind. The engine in the new C8 looks completely sealed from the world. Of course, you've got your back glass here. It looks like nothing is going to penetrate this barrier, but you'd be wrong because along the side you have these functional vents. There's even actually a gap way back here at the end for a little bit extra venting, but you'll notice here, still a rear defrost. You'll actually notice a number of cameras on the outside of the new C8 Corvette. You actually have two in the front, which allow you to see what you're going to run over, or if you're close to hitting that curb, you get a top-down view. You've got one in the rear, which is zoomable. You've got kind of a wide view and then a narrow view. And then you actually have one back here as well, and this is for the rearview mirror, so that you don't have to look through the rear glass if you want to look through the rearview mirror. Having said that though, the rear visibility is not all that terrible. The Corvette here has it's a square steering wheel, and Chevrolet says the bottom is square so you have additional room around your knees, and that the top is square so you have the most view down toward the front of the car, downward visibility. I'm not sure you actually get that much more downward visibility if you're somewhat tall like I am, and to be honest, if you drive a 10 and 2, it's just simply uncomfortable. I have a hard time finding a grip on the steering wheel that really is all that comfortable. However, the paddle shifters are brilliant. They are cold to the touch. Everything in here that looks aluminum is aluminum, and they respond instantly, letting that 8-speed transmission shift immediately.
All right, the first thing I noticed getting in the car immediately, of course, is the fact that now you have a squared off steering wheel. Why did you do that?
The key really is, there's a lot of inspiration that comes out of motorsports.
Yep.
And the reason we did in this car, they square off the bottom so you have more room for your legs for entry egress. And we squared off the top so you can get that view over the wheel down the road, and also give you a really wide aperture for your reconfigurable 12-inch cluster so you can see all the data, all the information.
I like the fact that this is actually colored the same as the interior, right? Normally these are a little red, right? This is a little marker that tells you which way the steering wheel is.
Exactly,
up, right?
yeah. Again, it's
a kind of a neat
got
touch.
some linkage back to motorsports,
Yeah.
and the design guys thought that'd be a neat sort of sporting touch.
This is something really special. This probably looks to you like a Holden Ute, but it's actually a development mule for the new Corvette, and we had a chance to sit down with the development engineer, the chief development engineer, around this new car.
All right, Mike, so we're here to talk about a Holden, which it really isn't a Holden. You're the development engineer on the new C8 Corvette.
Mm-hmm. This particular vehicle is a one of one. So we codenamed this vehicle Blackjack because within the company, as we started working on this, we kind of wanted to keep the fact that we were working on something that was a mid-engine product secretive, obviously outside, but even inside, because as we involve more folks, there's more opportunity or potential for leaks and so on.
So why'd you use a Holden?
So this was a very convenient clown suit. So as we start to look at how do I camouflage the fact that there's a mid-engine vehicle that we're trying to study here. Traditional camouflage like you see on the other development vehicles don't hide anything. So we thought it'd be neat to try to hide the engine underneath a truck kind of layout. So a Holden Ute had a very convenient shape, and we tried to emulate that shape. What's unique about this car is I have no donor for the body structure. So if you look in here, we have abundance of billet machined components. So this car, the components of the car, the body structure started with 7,000 pounds of billet. and we turned about 90% of that into recycled chips.
Would it be fair to say that this is the world's most expensive Corvette? Because it feels like it's all hand built.
If you add people time into that's probably a fair assessment.
There are a couple of different seat options here in the new Corvette. The base seat is called the GT1 seat, and it's going to be the most comfortable and the best for larger people. The next seat up is called the GT2. It's a little bit more aggressive, has some kind of stronger side bolstering. And then there's this seat, the competition seat. And I have the upper body strength of a limp squirrel, even these seats for me are a little bit tight. Let's talk about heat, because that is a very difficult thing to manage on a mid-engine car with the engine way in the middle and not in the front. On the standard 2020 Corvette, you actually have 2 radiators and 2 heat exchangers. Both radiators are in the front, one on each side. If you get the Z51, which this car is, the performance package, you actually have a 3rd radiator in one of the side vents. Now, funny enough, Chevrolet told us that if you live in the Middle East, you actually get a 4th radiator in the other side vent just to make sure your car is staying cool.
We had some heat issues in the last C7. How have you addressed those?
I think the key on this generation car was to sort of ratchet up the expectations around track performance from a thermal perspective, and our vehicle technical requirements now force us to validate at a higher temperature. So we've got extra bandwidth in the cooling capacity of the car now.
So basically what you said was we're going to make sure that when we test this car, it tests at a higher temperature than we did in the previous generation.
It's not only good enough to be functional on a Michigan summer day, you want it to be great on an Arizona summer day, and that's what we've engineered the car to.
You can have your new Corvette in any interior color you want, as long as it's one of 6, of course. But now they're actually offering colored seatbelts as well. There's many different colors of seatbelts. They cost over $300 to change the color, but really you can configure it however you want. It's exactly like what Porsche has been doing for a long time with different color stitching and seatbelts and headrest embroideries. There's just a lot of options on this new Corvette. There are a number of drive modes here inside the new Corvette, and you control them via this little knob hidden underneath this little Corvette shield. It looks very premium and it feels very premium. So you've got weather, which of course is for bad weather, rain, snow. My mode, which is totally configurable for your exhaust, steering, throttle response, all that. Then you've got tour, which is just gonna be your standard mode. So that, driving down the road every day, that's the one you're gonna use. Sport dials it up a little bit. And then track is a hardcore, let's see how fast we can go around the Nürburgring mode. But there's actually 2 additional modes. You have Z here, which configures the car a little bit differently. It's almost like an M button here in the steering wheel. And then a stealth mode, which Chevrolet tells us at night dims everything down. So it's just the driver and what's in front of you and the gauge cluster. That's pretty cool as well.
And then over here you've got the Z button, which is kind of like an M button in a BMW. Would that be fair?
It's a fair analogy. And the way we set up the Z mode is from the factory, it'll come with a combination of sport and track settings for things like steering, braking, dampers, exhaust sound, throttle progression, and shift maps. We've kind of picked the ones we thought that would give you the chance to jump in the car, hit one button, and really have an engaging car. But if it's not, if the factory presets aren't exactly what you like, you can go into the center screen here and customize the modes and change things.
According to GM, the C8 Corvette will do 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds if you get the performance exhaust, which is absolutely crazy. But the best part about this car is, just like all the Corvettes that came before it, when you're not driving it hard, when you're driving it every day like 99.9% of people are, it's gonna be super comfortable. There is a magnetic ride available in this car, but even with just a standard suspension, you cruise along, it's quiet, it's refined, it doesn't shake, it doesn't vibrate, it's not pulling at the leash, and it's got a lot of low-end torque. And then of course when you need to pass, you just dial it up a little bit, and off you go. It's effortless power, it's easy to use, and it's very approachable because it's mid-engine. It's got a lot of weight over the rear, so it's not trying to wag the rear end everywhere. The air vents are kind of unusual in this car. Rather than just having kind of up and down sliders on the left and the right of the air vent, you actually have these little toggles. So you can perfectly position where the air flows. But you're probably wondering, how do I turn off the air vent so I don't get any air onto my face at all? Well, you simply slide the little toggle all the way to the left, and that shuts it down. So you'll notice here in the Corvette, we actually have 2 screens that are pointed directly at the driver. You've got one in the cluster here, which is 12 inches. It's completely configurable with performance and audio and trip information. And then you have the 8-inch screen here in the center. This is your pretty standard GM or Chevrolet 8-inch screen with Apple CarPlay and navigation on this trim. But it works pretty well. It's just looking a little bit small now compared to some of the new luxury models coming out.
What are some of the firsts that never have been in a Corvette? I think you said a cross-traffic alert, right? That's the first type of Corvette.
We've got side blind zone cross-traffic alert, which really helps in a mid-engine car from a rear visibility. We've got the electronic digital camera mirror.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it gives you a much wider view immediately.
Right on. And it's adjustable for both intensity, height, and zoom. The front lift system that's available, it's not in this particular car, but it'll raise the front of the car about 40 millimeters in 2.8 seconds for folks that have, you know, steep driveways or whatever. So it's really about bringing the latest technology to the car and giving customers all the performance with the technology. You know, the advanced infotainment system really lets people connect and use their mobile devices seamlessly with the car.
The engine in the new C8 Corvette is surprisingly accessible. I mean, yes, the front and the very back are probably going to be pretty hard to get to, but unlike so many other mid-engine cars, at least you can see the engine and at least you can do a little bit of tinkering yourself. For example, they give you a traditional dipstick, which so many of the Germans have gone away from.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to take a ride with me. And guys, if you love a Corvette, you're not going to have long to wait, because I think you're already building them in Bowling Green.
That's right.
And they should be hitting the dealers in the next few weeks. So
that's exactly right.
If you've ordered them, and you have got a lot of pre-orders.
Yeah, it's been overwhelming, the interest in the car, so that's exciting. Then
they're out there, and we'll see. I got to tell you that we pull up here at the parking lot, and all the people that came around here to look at this car, it was incredible. I think when you get that, you must feel like you've kind of hit a home run.
It's fun. It's fun talking to all the people, and that they're not even sure what it is when you pull up and you explain to them how attainable it is, and people get really excited.
So there you have it, your first detailed look at the brand new 2020 Corvette. Let us know in the comments section below, what do you think of the new C8? Is this on your wish list? And which configuration would you get? As always, this has been Tommy with the Fastlane Car. Head over to tflcar.com because we have a lot more interesting info coming on this car in the near future.